Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Alex Fidrashevsky with you here, Three Rivers Broadcasting. Welcome to the Corner Kick, presented to you today by the Guard Market Waste Management and, of course, our fine sponsors, the Polish Falcons of America. Each Monday, we take you around the world of soccer in 60 minutes. We've got to whip around and go over a few things. Today, let's start it off right here at home and get into the program. Pittsburgh Riverhounds kept up their hopes for a home playoff game with a 2-1 win over the Charleston Battery on Saturday night at Highmark Stadium in front of a season-high crowd of about 4,100. Russell Cicerone, who else, scored the game winner for the Hounds, 79th minute. A beautiful, beautiful sequence there for the Riverhounds. We'll go over that in just a minute. Hounds had almost 60% of the possession in the first half. They had some of the early scoring chances. Peters had a good chance about 15, 16 minutes in. Wharton got a goal on the 27th minute to put them in the lead. And the assist was from Cicerone, who had kind of man of the match type day. He is the only player in the USL with goals and assists ranked in the top 10. So he's having a career year, an absolutely fantastic year for him. The tying goal came up 65th minute, and that was from Daly. He hit that from outside the box. They left a little too much space, didn't close him out. Bob Lilly talked about that in the post-game press conference and put a shot to the lower left corner from, let's say, about 25 yards. Bob Lilly made his first three subs in the 78th minute, and he had instant payback on the moves that he did. Jordan Dover goes into a challenge, wins the challenge, plays forward to Dixon, one touch forward to Cicerone, diagonal, left side of the box, hits it, 16th goal of the year. That is the third best goal-scoring season in Riverhounds history. Tiago Martins in 2003, so we're going way back, and Rob Vincent had 21 in 2015, and that's how it would end, 2-1. Russell Cicerone, I would say he's my man of the match, a goal and an assist. He had gone 6 matches without scoring from the run of play, so he broke that, and it was beautiful. I mean, absolutely beautiful sequence. We have there's like a no cheering thing in the press box, like, hey, we're here, we're professionals, this and that, and myself and a reporter from the Trib were like, yeah, that was really nice. I mean, Dover goes in, wins the challenge. Everything's on one touch. It just beautiful for that second goal, the game winner. Cicerone also connected on, I think it was 20 of his 26, passes they had set at the end of the game. So he had a really, really good day, but it wasn't the best performance. I think they were, the middle of the match didn't go so well for them. Bob Lilly wasn't too pleased with it in the post-match press conference. Cicerone said too, when we had him there, we weren't at our best tonight. We were good enough to get the result, but we have to find another gear as we go into the playoffs. Now, Saturday was supposed to be the final match of the season for the Riverhounds, and it's not now. The disaster that was Miami 2 weeks ago has now been amended by the USL. There was a whole to-do over, disallowed goals and officiating errors. Goal was awarded to Pittsburgh because Miami player puts it into his net from the run of play. The referees talk about it on the field. They disallow the goal. They award a corner kick to Pittsburgh. There's an investigation by the USL into this. They found that there was no evidence, of match fixing or they messed up. So what they did in order to protect the integrity of the game, Pittsburgh and Miami will now play on Wednesday night, the final 24 minutes of the game, and Pittsburgh will kick off. It'll kick off Miami ball with Pittsburgh having just scored, so that the own goal. Now Pittsburgh leads 1-0. They'll play out the 24 minutes, and this is an opportunity to snap off a couple more points in that race for the final home spot in the playoffs. So they can go and close out 24 minutes in Miami and then come home for the final match against Hartford on Saturday night at 7 o'clock. It's a big one. It's very, very important. Obviously, when you look at the idea of getting home field. They need Austin to take some points off of Charlotte on the last day, and then they need to get their victory too to seal that up to make sure that they will get a home playoff game here in the 2021 USL playoffs. The two teams, Hartford and Pittsburgh, they drew in Hartford 1-1 on May 15th. They turned around and Pittsburgh beat them on July the 31st at home. They played again in August, the 28th of August here. I'm looking right now. Pittsburgh beat them 3-2. So it's a pretty good run for Pittsburgh against Hartford this year. They haven't lost to them. They have a draw away and then, a couple of wins. So you have to like their chances going into the final match against an already eliminated Hartford side. And really, it'll be all to play for, especially if the Pittsburgh Riverhounds can turn the full points in Miami. If they can grab those extra couple of points, that could potentially go a long way as far as their playoff hopes are concerned. And otherwise, right now, I think their form over the last month has been pretty good. Again, maybe this match on Saturday, it wasn't their best single performance of the season, but they've just continued to kind of rise as Bob Lilly always, his sides always tend to do over the course of of the last month. But Charlotte, Charlotte's five on the trot right now, and they got the kind of the blessing in the run in, though they've been blistering all of September and October. I think that's worth mentioning. Charlotte's only lost one match in the last month and a half, in September and October. They tied Miami, and so they've only given away 5 points over the course of the last month and a half. It's just win. They beat the Riverhounds down there too. So and they got the benefit of the run in that, Pittsburgh played them at the front end. Charlotte's got them at the back end, where it was, in October, Loudoun United twice and New York Red Bulls too. And Loudoun again in September. So they played Loudoun United. That's 3 times against the last place team in the last month and a half of the season. Is 9 points. And I think that, there was some hope that Hartford could have clipped a point off of Charlotte, and it didn't happen at home. Couldn't do it. So, again, Charlotte, Charlotte is certainly cooking. And with another game against Loudoun United coming up on Wednesday, you have to like their chances of possibly holding on to that home game. They'll end it up on Saturday at Austin, who is absolutely fighting for their playoff lives coming into the end. So well that Austin's going to fight for it. They got a draw against San Antonio at the weekend, 0-0. So they're currently in 5th in their division, but they're right there. Right there on the cusp of being able to get into the playoffs. If they can grab a result on the final day against Charlotte, New Mexico plays Real Salt Lake's reserve team, who is in last. So again, Austin's going to need a win, and they're going to need the Real Monarchs to actually show up and play the game. And Rio Grande Valley has 2 opportunities because they have Real Monarchs and then the Salt Lake Reserves, and then they play El Paso on the last day. So, Austin could get past on, Wednesday, but there's still all to play for them. So if you're the Riverhounds, you have to be happy that going into the final match, Austin, in spite of goal differential and this and that, like there could be a reason for them to still have to go all at it against Charlotte and claim the points. So that's kind of where Pittsburgh's at. It's going to be simply win, close if they can close this out and take that's extra points, and you probably you're in a spot where you're going to probably get the home game. Otherwise, you're probably otherwise you're going on the road. So it's really take the 2 results this week for Bob Lilly's Pittsburgh Riverhounds. Obviously their playoff berth is secured. But if you're looking for a home game, which is what everybody wants, fans and media alike, you want to get the home playoff game. It's really the do or die crunch point of the season for them, and if they want to have the opportunity to play at least one more game here at Highmark Stadium, got to do it all. Got to do it all and come away with it all here on the final week of the USL regular season. Not much else to talk about as far as the USL will get into the playoff situation on Monday. The only one that matters for us right now is Pittsburgh. They've qualified. It's just a case of where will they sit on the final day. We could talk about, some other things here as we get into the program now. Well, I guess we could talk about a little bit about MLS as New England has claimed the Supporters Shield, and Bruce Arena has done a masterful job there. 21 wins, just 4 losses. They're pushing the all-time points record. It's certainly not out of the question for them on 70. The LAFC finishes with 72. So, they could close this off with a win against Orlando. They tied Orlando last night. I was watching that. If they could beat Colorado at home on Wednesday, they will set the all-time record, and it will be the fourth time in 5 seasons that the record will fall. The previous record, which was highly impressive in and of itself, was LA on a shorter season in 1998, had 68 points. But since then, it was broken in 2017 and 2018. In 2017, it was broken by Toronto by a point to 69. Atlanta tied it on 69 in 2018. Red Bull broke it in 2018 on 71. And then LAFC did it a year later. Last year with the COVID year didn't happen. But now you're looking at another, theoretically, the 4th normal season in a row, because if you take last year out of it, the 4th normal season in a row that the Supporters Shield most points in a regular season record will be done. And they need 3 points from 2 games. So they're both at Gillette, Colorado and Miami. Revolution beat them 5-0 in July. So you have to like the odds for Bruce Arena to break the Supporters Shield record, which again for me, I view that as a very, very lofty, important goal. I know we live in North America, and Andy and I've talked about this on Pittsburgh Sports Report that the playoffs are what really matters. Getting above the line and performing in the playoffs is what North American sports fans really value. And for me, now we're at a point in North American sports where half the teams in each league make the playoffs. So how important are the playoffs in actuality? Are they really that? I mean, I guess that's it. It's the pressure, the marketing, the this and the that. So it's important, but I look at the regular season right now, and you look at the Eastern Conference, and New England is on 70 points. They're 21 points clear of Philadelphia. It is without question that the New England Revolution are the best team in the league this year. And they've got some fantastic talent. I mean, obviously, Tajon Buchanan was sold and is back on loan. Matt Turner, goalkeeper, starter for the U.S. national team, who certainly could earn himself a move. And then, Adam Buksa from Poland, 25 years old, who's now kind of a regular in the mix for Poland. 16 goals. Right outside of Ola Kamara for the Golden Boot. Came over at the end of 2019 from Pogoń Szczecin and has made it look easy. He's had some good help. I think that they've managed to utilize their designated players pretty smartly, and they've got a pretty solid back line as well that I really enjoy watching. Of American players. So I've enjoyed watching the New England Revolution, as feisty as they may be, and I know that Red Bull has had a little bit of a rivalry with them. I've enjoyed watching the New England Revolution, and I think the utilization of Buxa has been good, and Gilles has played well for them over the course of the last couple of seasons, and one of the kind of unsung players is I always like to say Andrew Farrell. I've said this for some time. 29 years old. He never got a cap for the U.S. national team. He won't now, given the way the national team pool is set up. But he's been a starter in New England from day one in his first season in the league, where he came out of the University of Louisville and was only missing 2 matches a year. And he's 29, still healthy. He's a very, very good defender. And he was one of those guys who I always thought could have made a move. And they, just never happened, never materialized for him. But he has been a solid MLS player. The Bruce went to De La Garza, brought him in. So he's got, Tommy McNamara. They're not world beaters, but they've got guys who know how to navigate an MLS season and the travel, and Bruce Arena also he's in that class of managers who knows how to kind of work the MLS system, and he's done a very, very good job of it. Farrell, to his credit, Farrell again has only missed 1 game this year. New England has played 32. He's played in 31 of them. And again, the largely American back line of Henry Kessler, Brandon Bye, and DeJuan Jones, along with Farrell, have all played very well. And I think a couple of these guys, they could all make that case to make a move. Are they national team players? Probably not. Not with the depth of talent that the U.S. national team has at this point at all of these positions. That if you're not breaking into Europe when you're 18, 19, 20 years old like these guys are now, or like your Ricardo Pepi is about to, and a host of I think other players will, maybe even a Miles Robinson from Atlanta, who is 23, 24, but Atlanta's gone sideways. I think Robinson's got to find a move. He's in the national team mix. You don't want a national team starter on the 8th place team in Major League Soccer in the Eastern Conference. And if you break that down over, the course of the Supporters' Shield, you're talking about having, again, a national team starter who is on the, what are they, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They would be about 15th in the league. That would be like, England saying we're going to take a starter from Southampton. It's just not going to happen. So, some of those guys could probably make the jump from New England. They've got the talent to. They probably won't because of their age, 23, 24, 25. They'll probably be MLS lifers, which is fine. They probably won't ever end up in the national team pool. But if you have 4 guys like that on your back line, you're going to be very tough to break down. And then Matt Turner's sitting there behind you, who's the national team goalkeeper right now. They've put all the pieces together over the last year and a half in New England to be very good. Matt Polster plays for them. He was good in Chicago. Didn't work out for him at Rangers, but he's come back and he's a regular now. Obviously, I said McNamara is a regular for them, and Buxon 16 goals. Gustavo Bou has 15 this year off of 28 games, so he's also playing very, very well. So and then throw Tejan out wide, and Teal Bunbury coming off the bench. The Bruce he's got a good team. At the beginning of the year, I wasn't sure how they'd hold up, but they've certainly done the job, and they've won the Shield. Now they could set the all-time points record for MLS, and it could be a swan song for a couple of them. It will be for Tejan as he goes overseas. He's going to be back to Bruges as he was sold there this summer. So they sold him, loaned him back, and to finish the season, and then he goes in the new year. And I think Buxa could be gone, if not in January, it'll be next summer. He's in his prime. He has, he's really played at a high level and dominated And now it was Albania and San Marino, but he does have now 5 goals and 5 caps for the Polish national team. So he's in the mix. For Poland, and I have to believe that if Paulo Sousa has his way, he's gonna be making some phone calls to him saying, I think you should probably strongly consider a move to Europe to maximize your potential and stay in the mix here, along with guys like Piontek and Świderski and Kovnatski and a bunch of other guys who are in and out. Obviously, Milik's hurt all the time, but you have 8 or 9 attackers. Buksa's hot-handed. You're probably going to pressure him, and don't know, was there a little pressure put on Frankowski for them when he left Chicago for loan, and he's playing well at loan, but was there a call that was made that said, hey, there's 7 other guys, we could go after that are young players that play out wide. You want to be in the team, better get your butt back here. I could see that happening with Buksa, and then Turner, I think, will be in high demand as well. Will he go? I don't know. They may give him a lot of money to stick around, but Turner certainly deserving of a jump abroad. And we have no national team play right now, so we can talk a little bit about Major League Soccer and what's going on, and we'll even touch on some of the European stuff. I mean, there's big news that I haven't even touched on with Manchester United. We're waiting to see with bated breath, would Monday be the day where Ole Gunnar Solskjaer gets shown the door? I think we escaped Monday because it's now crossing over into Tuesday in the United Kingdom, and the announcement never came. So Ole may live to fight another day. I think worth mentioning in the Eastern Conference, too, of Major League Soccer is the form of the team where I came from, Red Bull New York, who were rocky at best. Gerhard Struber took over a absolute dumpster fire that Chris Armas left him. Jesse Marsch gave Armas the keys to the bus of the strongest franchise in Major League Soccer with the deepest academy in the history of the league. And Armas managed to screw it all up in a year and a half and was shown the door and immediately was taken in by his friends and given the job in Toronto. And then he screwed that up too. So again, Chris Armas should probably never manage a Major League Soccer team ever again. His best place is as the assistant. Maybe an academy coach, if maybe a USL 2 guy. I don't think Chris Armas should ever be near an MLS team again. That's just my opinion as a broadcaster and a soccer guy. I think that his handling and bundling of Red Bull was terrible, and then the Toronto one was possibly even worse. But either way, he took two top shelf teams and managed to ride them into the ground in 2 years. So Gerhard Struber came in, took over an absolute train wreck, pieced together a largely young roster of unproven players or cast-offs, and gave a player like Patrick Klimala a bit of a retread second life at just 23 years old now. And yes, the Red Bull system is all about 18, 20, 21, 22-year-old players with a couple older guys in the mix, like a Sean Davis for Red Bull New York, who's 28 and, still playing pretty well and getting, pretty decent coin. But he took a roster that it wasn't glitzy. It wasn't very good either on paper or the pitch. And I know that, the attempts to try to bleed some younger players like John Tolkien or Winkelman Carmona and Christian Cáceres, who are, again, these guys are 18 to, Cáceres is the oldest guy at 21. They had to showcase Caden Clark. He's going to Leipzig. They don't really use him anymore. I don't blame him. You don't want to get him hurt. Omir Fernandez is just 22. You forget when you look at this team that these guys are still so young. But he had to kind of wash out the junk that was there, and then is still dealing with some leftover, pieces that have to be dealt with in the offseason, including Aaron Long, who I always thought was one of the most overrated, overhyped players in Major League Soccer. Never impressed with him at the national team level. Always thought with Red Bull that Tim Parker was the one providing the cover that made Long look better than he actually was. And then the hype train around Aaron Long was so pathetic that it made my head spin, because it was West Ham, all this random, and you weren't seeing it in the British tabloids. You weren't seeing the Sun and Sky and all this saying, oh yes, there's interest from West Ham for New York Red Bulls, Aaron Long. No, it was this like MLS hype train about Aaron Long being the best frickin' defender that the United States has ever produced. And, trying to market the hell out of him, and, was that a reason to justify his inclusion in the national team when, again, I didn't think he was any good to begin with. Well, and you don't want to see a guy get hurt, but Long got hurt. It was probably the best thing that happened to the friggin' national team, because it forced them to go somewhere else. It forced them to use players that are better overseas, or even a guy like Robinson from Atlanta that I had just mentioned. Forced him to use him. And Red Bull, I think, once they settled in without him, they've performed okay. And in the last month, they've turned it on. They got a couple to go. They got four games left. But Red Bull, Red Bull hasn't, they haven't given away many points. In September, whether they give 7 points in September or 8 points in September and October with 4 games to go, 4 games in a row, they've won. And have now crossed the line, which personally, that just says to how bad the Eastern Conference of Major League Soccer is this year. That the New York Red Bulls, with as poor as they have played all season, are able to they're across the line now, which again is just it's just mind-boggling that they've managed to now cross the threshold. They, again, with a few games left, they've got 4. There's 4 to play. They got 4 to play. 2 of them are at home against Montreal and Atlanta, who are fighting for those, the last spot. It's essentially those 3 teams plus New York City and maybe DC if they can hold serve for the last spot. You got 4 teams for the last spot. They've got DC away, Montreal home, and Atlanta at home. They're probably going to make the playoffs. DC's form is pitiful right now. They've lost 3 out of 4. They got crushed on Saturday against New York City, 6-0. So they just did their goal differential. They fell behind in the first minute. It was 2-0 before 10 and 3-0 after 11. They were finished. And I don't think DC United's a playoff team anyway. When you look at the roster, it's not a postseason team. New York City barely is, but they could hold on. They could hold on and stay above the line. There's a couple of weeks left. Everybody's got anywhere from 2 to 4 games left to play in the last couple of weeks of the regular season. But as crazy as it sounds, I mean, you gotta like Red Bull New York's chances. I know we're getting out of market, but they've been the hot hand in the Eastern Conference over the last 5 games with 4 wins and a draw. So it's worth. Again, we're not in an international window for a show right now, so we got to talk about MLS. They're worth talking about. And yeah, I had season tickets there for a long, long time, but I've kind of distanced myself from really paying attention too much to Red Bull this year. And in the last month, they've been hot. It's kind of like what you see sometimes with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds with Bob Lilly. They catch that run right at the perfect point of the season. They catch that run and they're off to the races. And Red Bull's kind of got that going right now. And then more locally, I think, you take a look at the Columbus Crew, who have kind of gone a little bit sideways, and with 3 games to go, they're in a world of hurt. I don't see the Columbus. There's too many variables that need to happen for the Crew to make the playoff. Which in MLS, again, half the teams make the playoffs. You really didn't have that good of a year if you finished 8th out of 14 and you're in the playoffs in the conference. But Columbus right now is 11th, 5 points off the last spot, which is currently tied. Red Bull, New York, and Red Bull Atlanta and Montreal, Columbus is really in win-out territory here. They've got 2 at home against Orlando and Chicago, which are gifts. Now you got to take 6, and you got to put a couple in on them. Or Orlando gave some points away. You got to make sure you get points if you're Columbus Crew. I guess they're our regional MLS team, if we're going to say that. Columbus needs to take full points off of Orlando City, which again, that's a home game. They're going to make the playoffs, barring a disaster. And then they play DC away, and then Chicago, who's just listless in the last game. So it's a lot of ground to make up, and they need a lot of teams to not get results. And I don't think that 47 for the Crew on 3 wins might not be enough. And they're going to have to do it without Gyasi Zardes, which, I mean, whatever. My opinion of Gyasi Zardes. He's a good MLS striker. I guess, I'm trying to be positive these days. I'm trying to, not be negative anymore when I do the show. I'm trying to be positive here. Yeah, Gyasi Zardes is a good MLS striker. I mean, he shouldn't be anywhere near the national team, but he does a good job. He does a good job in MLS. He runs real hard. He hustles. He's a hustle guy. I actually think that the Crew underachieved this year, specifically with the talent that they had in the midfield with Darlington Nagbe and Perry Kitchen and Zella Ryan and a couple other guys that they've got in there, Derek Etienne and Mashan from Romania. I feel like they should have done better. Their backline, I think, betrayed them, and part of that comes with the age on the backline. Pretty much everybody who saw key time this year is 30 or older. Not that that's necessarily the end of the world, but again, Harrison Affel is 35, Vito Wormgoor 32, Williams is 33, Mensah and Francis are 31. So even your outside backs are 35, 31, 31. Like you're not young anymore. You don't have, you might not have the pace anymore. I'm not even a professional athlete, and I can tell you I don't run as fast as I did when I was 20. That's just life. But again, the crew are in a bit of a way. As are again, they're I don't want to say that Pittsburgh people are Columbus Crew fans, because I mean we have the Riverhounds, but if you I guess if you had to pick one in Pittsburgh, you'd probably look at the Columbus Crew and be like, well, we can drive to their games, so I'll sort of dabble in the Columbus Crew because we can be there in 2.5 hours, grab a hotel and hang out downtown in Columbus after the game, and then head on back the next morning. So I suppose it would be the Columbus Crew. That's why I kind of talk about them a little bit here at the end of the season. They're a touch away from being eliminated from the playoffs. So I mean they are on 9. It's 9 or bust. It's 47 points and hope it's enough. Because, again, there are too many other variables that probably won't happen for them to get to 7th place. I don't see Red Bull giving up their vice grip now that they're in. Red Bull is not only is Red Bull in, Red Bull's going to try to fight to get in the top 4. They're gonna push, and I think they could. I think they, with what they have left, they've got the games. They have the game in hand. So does Atlanta. They're gonna make a spirited push for the top 4, and I just don't see it for the Crew this year. And the only other team I guess you would consider if you were a Pittsburgh person, maybe it would be Cincinnati, but I think that's too far already. That's 4.5 hours from here, 4 hours from here. That's probably too far. Columbus is right on the fringe if you're gonna go watch an MLS game right now in Pittsburgh. Obviously we don't have an MLS team. Who knows? Maybe one day Tuffy Schallenberger will have us in MLS, and the Riverhounds will be playing against the likes of the Chicago Fire and Philadelphia Union. Wouldn't that be something? Have a nice 20,000 seat stadium on the North Shore, or even down on the Mon, on the site of one of the old steel mills. Or in Middle Hill, that old parking lot across from The hockey arena. Be a perfect place for a soccer stadium. Just throwing my thoughts out there. But I do love going down to Highmark Stadium right now. It's a nice little atmosphere, but hey, you never know. Maybe Pittsburgh's an MLS team one day. Maybe there's a franchise that ends up here because MLS ain't stopping at 30. Anyone who thinks they're going to stop at 30, no, there's far too much money in it for everyone for them to stop at 30. They'll hit 40. They'll hit 40 at some point because they're not going to stop. There's too many markets that want in. There's too many NFL investors in baseball. They haven't tapped all of these investors yet. So they're not going to stop. There will be more. It's just like and I know we kind of report on the USL. The USL isn't going to stop either. They're not going to get to 32 teams or whatever it is and go, okay, we're good. Like, we're good. That's it. No more franchises. No more franchises. I mean, they had 36 in 2019. Now they've contracted a little bit. There's 31 because a lot of these MLS2s have given it up. But you look ahead to the future. I mean, there's already 5 teams lined up to come into the USL in the next 3 years. You get 2 next year already. Monterey Bay goes into Seaside, California, which God bless them. I hope that it works. Ray Bischoff is their owner, and Bischoff owned Fresno FC, and he ceased operations because he couldn't come to an agreement with the city for a soccer-specific stadium, so he just shut the team down. It's the dangerous part about franchise sports. Fresno had a pretty good fan base. They were averaging over 4,000 a game in their 2 seasons, and he pulled the plug. They were playing at the baseball stadium at Chukchansi Park, which is a nice ballpark. And personally, as minor league baseball kind of does one of these, their stadiums are perfect places to have soccer in. Perfect places to have soccer in. And cashed up minor league baseball owners would be wise to double up and do soccer at the same time, because when the baseball team's away, you could have the soccer team playing at home. But it was unfortunate for Fresno that they kind of got screwed on that. But Monterey Bay, which is where he wanted to put the team in the first place, is getting a team. Then you got Queensboro FC coming in. That's David Villa, David Villa's team. And I believe Ali Wagner is part owner of that as well. They're going to play at York College in Jamaica, Queens. So that'll be another team that the Pittsburgh Riverhounds will be seeing next year. Most likely, I'm assuming they're going to be in the Atlantic Division, and it could mean that Miami gets the boot into the Central. Somebody's going to get moved here, and it's either going to be Miami or Pittsburgh that's going to get moved. My guess is that it's or Tampa. There's going to be some type of shakeup that happens here next year. Somebody's going to probably have to get moved. But it may be short term, because there will be a bigger shakeup in 23 as the USL adds Pawtucket, Rhode Island, Buffalo, New York, and then Des Moines comes in. Des Moines comes in the year after, in 2024, and I imagine Des Moines will be in the West. That's my guess, at least, that the Des Moines, Iowa will have to go with the Mountain Division. They'll be with El Paso, New Mexico. Rio Grande Valley, San Antonio. My guess is that's where they're going to end up, though. They'll probably argue for Eastern Conference Central Division, because that's Sporting 2. Tulsa, Memphis is in there, OKC, Louisville, maybe a little shorter travel. They might argue for that one. But as you can see, the punchline here is like the USL's not stopping. They're not going to stop. There's too much money to be made through the expansion fees, and the MLS isn't going to stop either at the top level, because if they can get an NFL owner or a major, someone from the Pistons or the Red Wings or someone in Detroit who says, hey, let's do it, they're going to do it. They're going to go to Detroit. If a major investor appears in Milwaukee, whether it's the Brewers, the Bucks, or someone else that says, yeah, you know what, let's do it. Let's do MLS in Milwaukee. They're going to go there. It's just how this franchise model works. They could say, 30 teams and that's it, like the NFL, and we're going to raise the value. No. They're not going to stop. MLS is not the NFL. They're not. They need the money. So they'll keep going. And as far as the USL is concerned, I mean, why not keep going? There are so many between their USL Championship, which is what the Riverhounds are in, and their USL League One. Why the hell not? Like, go to 40 in the USL Championship. I mean, there's no promotion or relegation. You're the second division. Like, you're kind of locked in where you're at. If I was the USL, I would capitalize on every single secondary and tertiary market in the entire country. And I think that's the plan. The USL Championship will be for the larger markets. It's your Pittsburgh and now Buffalo coming in, and Pawtucket, it's Providence, Rhode Island coming in. Cleveland's an outlier. Cleveland is an outlier. I thought maybe Haslam would push for MLS in Cleveland, but he bought Columbus to save him after that Anthony Precourt mess. So Columbus might be out of the MLS picture, but somebody could probably make a good run at the USL Championship in Columbus, and you could have in a couple of years, if somebody makes that run, you could have Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Columbus. That's a nice little Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Cleveland. That's a nice little rivalry. I think fans would travel and have a blast. But the USL Championship, I mean, there's plenty of cities out there that they could go and pop teams, and they could get to 40, 50 teams without even blinking. Why not? Why not? If the fees are out there and there's the interest, and, does it water down the talent pool? Yeah, a little bit. It's going to water down the talent pool a little bit if you keep going and going and going and going without, further branching down a pyramid. As opposed to, let's say England or, a lot of places in Europe where it's like 16 to 18 teams in the top flight and then another 16 to 18, another 16 to 18, and then it kind of balloons out into the local or regional leagues where it's like 20 teams. But why not keep going? And USL has the League One, which is the kind of the third tier of professional soccer now. They've already got another 5 teams lined up coming in the next 2 years. Fresno has a team coming back. It's the Central Valley Fuego. They are owned by Juan and Alicia Ruelas, who hopefully will be more committed to the cause than the previous guy who tried it in Fresno. And I like the nod, too, with Central Valley Fuego. That's a nice nod to the cap to the Fresno Fuego, same city, who played in USL's the PDL from 2000. I think it was 2002 to 2006 or 2007. They were operating. Northern Colorado is getting another. Colorado is getting another professional soccer team. Yeah, they've got the Rapids, and then they have Colorado Springs. They're now getting a team that is going to be called the Northern Colorado Hailstorm. There's a good name, but they'll be playing in Windsor, Colorado. That's up in northern Colorado. I'm not really sure what the major town is around there. I don't know if it's Greeley, perhaps. Greeley is the major center there. I don't really know too much about the area around Windsor, Colorado. What metropolitan area is it a part of? It's halfway between Fort Collins and Greeley, so it's somewhere up in northern Colorado. So they'll be getting a USL 2 team. Fort Wayne, Indiana, Lexington, Kentucky, Spokane, Washington. You can see that they're not going to stop the expansion. The expansion's going to happen. And I guess to wrap this all up is that MLS isn't going to stop. So there's always a possibility that Pittsburgh could be in the MLS one day. There we go. 10-minute ramble on why this, that, who, the other thing. But yeah, why don't we step aside here, take a quick pause for the cause, and then we will come back and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in Manchester.
Turn into a career? If so, why don't you hit the road with Waste Management? Waste Management is hiring experienced and entry-level CDL truck drivers and technicians. If you're at least 18 years of age, come join our growing team and get up to a $7,000 sign-on bonus based on experience. WM offers competitive pay and industry-leading benefits, including tuition reimbursement for yourself and dependents. Start your tomorrow today. Visit WM online at careers.wm.com. Carnegie Ironworks is Pittsburgh's go-to for artistic, unique, and decorative steel and iron designs. We provide custom fencing, interior and exterior railings, outdoor fire pits, window coverings, and much more. If you can think of it, we can fabricate it. Find us on the web at www.carnegieiron.com. That's Carnegie Ironworks, for when you need it, for 500 years.
All right, we're back here on Corner Kick. Alex Fidrushevsky with you. Again, Pittsburgh Riverhounds got their last home game of the season coming up on Saturday night. We hope to see you all down at Highmark Stadium for the final home game. Hopefully there's a playoff game coming up, but as of right now, it stands as the final home game in the Pittsburgh Riverhound season. Wanted to go overseas. We're going to get out of the United States for a little bit. I like, we talk mostly U.S. soccer on Corner Kick. We used to brand it Corner Kick USA because JJ and I would just talk straight up U.S. soccer the whole time. I try to keep it that way and kind of keep the legacy of that where, we're an American soccer show, so we should talk about American soccer topics. We'll grab one more and then we'll get into Manchester. There is a U.S. businessman, Chris Kirchner, who was the founder of Slink.io, who is trying to come salvage Derby. He's going to try to get them out of bankruptcy. He's 34 years old, and he's in the beginning processes of trying to take over Derby and get him out of administration. They were one of the 12 founding members of the Football League. I don't know if you knew that or not. 1888. They won the first division twice in the 70s. They haven't played in the Premier League since, I think it was 07-08. I think that was the last year. There were a couple of takeover bids that didn't work, but I guess Kirchner is going to give it a go. This is an American trying to step in and rescue Derby County, currently managed by Wayne Rooney. So there's another little bit of Americans investing in soccer overseas. There's a lot of it going on. Speaking of investing in soccer overseas, there is a disastrous situation in Manchester with Manchester United. And I don't know if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is to blame for this. I think he's a victim in all of this. There's no standard, and the expectancy of the Glazers and Ed Woodward have stayed the same. And they lost. Okay, so here's the deal. They lost 5-0 to Liverpool yesterday. It was bad. And none of the execs, Woodward, who's the outgoing vice chairman, nor the Glazers were there. And this was supposed to be, kind of the game of the season. And this was a game that those very executives, Woodward, the Glazers, and the other bastards, and I'm going to use that term because I don't care, that were in the Greedy 6, or Greedy 12, I guess it was, that wanted to make this one of the marquee fixtures of the breakaway European Super League because, we're going to go the NFL route and the fans are going to love it because we're American owners and, NFL is what's going to work, and it's going to work everywhere because in America, that's what works. And then they realized that the entire soccer world turned on them and the federations turned on them. American soccer fans turned on them, and they realized they actually didn't know what they were talking about. But how can they say they care about United when this, which is supposed to be their one of their pride and joy games, especially when they were going to have their Super League where, we're going to raise a middle finger to the rest of the soccer world and we're going to go try to cash out because, all of the clubs that were involved are in debt up to their eyeballs and can barely function because of financial mismanagement over the last 10 to 12 years. Kind of like Barcelona. You want to know why Barcelona stinks right now? Because Barcelona's executives mismanaged the damn team for the last 15 years, overpaid themselves, overpaid everybody else, fleeced the money out of the club, and now they stink because they can't sign anybody because the books aren't balanced and they have nothing. It's amazing they're actually hanging around in the position that they're hanging around in. There's enough working parts still left at Barcelona where they can kind of hold on. But what you're starting to see, I'm going to say it, what you're starting to see here is the majority of the greedy dozen. PSG's kind of, they're in their own little realm right now in France, but, Barcelona's mid-table because the bottom is falling out. Madrid is still hanging on at the top, and they were in a little bit, maybe a little bit better financial situation. Not much, but a little bit better. They're hanging around there, but there's not this huge gap where Madrid's 9 for 9 on 27 points and the season's over. No. We're a third of the way through, and, Real Sociedad is in first. Madrid is tied with Sevilla. Atleti, Betis, and Osasuna are all punching right at them within 2 points. And then there's Vallecano and Bilbao, and then Barcelona is ninth. They thought they could get away with financial fair play skirting forever. Well, now the hammer is being dropped. And you look at all the teams, they talked about this European Super League when half the teams in it were possibly not making Europe last year. And, Fergie stepped down, 8 or 9 years ago now in Manchester? And that's when Woodward and the Glazers took 100% management of the club. Fergie was the final Man U manager who ran the day-to-day operations of the whole thing. He ran the scouting, he ran the training, the whole thing. He was in charge. They've got 3 major trophies, if you will. They got the Europa League and FA Cup and the League Cup, or the Carabao Cup, they call it now, the League Cup. And they finished twice in the Premier League, which isn't bad. That's 5 positive finishes in 8 or 9 years. The thing is at Manchester United, they would expect probably 5 or 6 trophies in 8 years with a Premier League title, at least 1, and 3, maybe 4 second place finishes. They've never finished above Manchester City. And it's been a managerial nightmare. But now that we really start to dig in, there was David Moyes, you had Jose Mourinho, you've had Solskjaer where it hasn't worked out too well. Some of it's the manager. Solskjaer's not innocent here. They also lost the Europa League final and a couple semifinals. So they're not playing horrible soccer, but in the eyes of Manchester United fans, media, they're playing horrible soccer. They've always fallen short with Solskjaer. And a lot of this has to do with the Glazers. They don't, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it certainly seems like they don't care. Fergie was up here. Fergie demanded excellence. At every stop, at every level. Fergie pushed that. He demanded them to be fantastic. And they're okay, I think, with not being fantastic. They're not appointing the top guys. They've got in their kind of negotiators and their senior positions in the board, they're guys who went to Bristol and ended up in banking, and they might be great at banking, but they've never worked in the game. They're not soccer guys. And Woodward, again, said he was going to step down in April after the blow up of the Super League. He's still there. And that he's saying he may stick around till April. And there's nobody willing to, no, that's a year. And the Glazers seem fine with it. They're not following that idea of excellence that specifically Manchester City's following and now that Chelsea's following. They thought that Jose was going to be this massive thing. They thought that was quote unquote, you could say maybe pulling out the stops. It didn't. It didn't work out for him. And I guess for the Glazers, and again, this is where the fans are losing it, and is Solskjaer in big trouble? He might be in big trouble, but at the end of the day, the Glazers need to look in the mirror, and the players, from what we've read here, are losing. They're losing confidence. They're losing confidence, and they're losing faith in Solskjaer. But they're probably players who shouldn't be there to begin with, that aren't necessarily cut out to that level. Cristiano Ronaldo is still very good, but Cristiano Ronaldo's not a 90-minute guy anymore. He's the guy you bring in the 70th minute. He's a guy who probably at his age should be bordering on taking the MLS money or going to Saudi Arabia or Qatar or wherever it is where he's going to get that massive final payday. Not Manchester. Not when you want to be in the Champions League, win the Cup, win the FA Cup, win all of that. And the rumor they floated is Antonio Conte, which, Cristiano Ronaldo is going to have a conniption over because he's a defensive coach. And he's ruthless. Absolutely ruthless. He'll put Ronaldo on the bench in a second. He don't care how many jerseys the Glazers want to sell. And he'll sit there and tell him, you didn't hire me to sell jerseys. You hired me to win games. He's on the bench. And then that'll start a whole nother war. It'll be interesting to see if he keeps his job. Does he deserve to lose it? Probably not. He's doing the best that they've laid out for him. They apparently seem okay with mediocrity at Manchester United right now. And again, the fans are ticked. Former players are ticked. I don't know if they're angry at Solskjaer per se. I think they're mad at the organization, the club itself, the Glazers. But again, as long as they sell 1 million Ronaldo jerseys a week, that's really all they care about. Because they make $1 bajillion off of selling Ronaldo kits. And that's a major reason why they signed him. Yes, it was great that he went home, quote unquote home, and he's going to play there. But from their view, that's just like, man, if we can sign Cristiano Ronaldo again, well, how many millions, maybe tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of kits we'll sell worldwide. 9 billion people. How many, probably hundreds of millions of Ronaldo kits would be sold throughout Europe and South America and the United States and Canada and Australia and Asia. Hundreds of millions of Ronaldo kits would get sold. And they'll cash in on every one of them. So that's it. We're out of time for the Corner Kick. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back here. Go Riverhounds. We'll see you on Saturday down at Highmark Stadium.